Welcome back. There's something I really wanted to talk about. If the Democrats can take back power in 2020, what needs to be the number one priority? Here with me now to talk about that, the host of Signal Boost on Sirius XM Radio, also an MSNBC political analyst, Zerlina Maxwell. Also with me tonight, the Senior Vice President for Social Justice at the New School and an MSNBC legal analyst, Maya Wiley. And the President of Community Change, which organizes in low-income communities across the country, Dorian Warren. I'm somewhat obsessed with this. I've been asking every candidate because candidates don't want to choose. Mm-hmm. They want to say everything's a priority, but if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. Mm-hmm. It is zero sum. Like, there's going to be one big piece of legislation you're going to push on. I personally think it should be climate, just because of where the climate is. But what you're looking at me like, no.
No, you're wrong, Chris. You're wrong. Okay, look, I'll be really quick and succinct. We just celebrated the 125th Labor Day on Monday. Happy Labor Day, everybody. So this won't be a surprise to you. Labor law reform, in my view, should be the number one priority because it's a twofer. One, if you increase bargaining power for workers and a voice at work and bring democracy in the workplace, then workers will bargain for higher wages. We've had wage stagnation. This addresses inequality.
It's kitchen table.
It's kitchen table. But the second part of it is you actually build power. You build power, especially for low-income people struggling to make ends meet. Unions are one of the best sources of getting people out to vote. So you're building a civic institution at the same time you're addressing a key issue of inequality.
We should note that Republicans do the opposite.
Exactly.
Which is that when they take over a state house, often the first thing they do is go after unions.
Exactly.
We have seen this happen in Ohio and Wisconsin. Of course, the other issue there is that means if you do that, you don't do immigration and you don't do...
Well, immigration would be my number two. But
yes. But only one thing gets to be number one, Maya.
Well, I maybe should run for president because I can't pick one either. But I think you should. But I am going to say healthcare reform and specifically include in that prescription drugs. Biggest reason is because one of the things that Democrats must do is make sure that every American feels the difference. And healthcare is still one of the biggest costs that American families suffer under. We actually have a huge number of Americans who thankfully are more insured, but a lot more who are underinsured. Mm-hmm. Plus, I work at a university. I see what the healthcare cost does to the cost of tuition. So if we want to actually deal with people's ability to send their kids to college, we also have to deal with healthcare costs.
I mean, all of that is true. And from a just concrete thing, I mean, Democrats have been running on prescription drugs. They've been one thing I worry about from a political standpoint is just watching, we watched in 2008, healthcare became the priority because of that debate. They passed the stimulus, and then the first big thing they did was healthcare, and it took a lot of political capital. Mm-hmm. The next administration comes in, the first thing they do is healthcare, and they try twice, and they fail, and it takes a lot of political capital. And it's just a little worried about rerunning
but
the script.
Climate change doesn't take political
That's
capital.
exactly right. My point about it more is that you get a budget of political capital up front that you have to sort of choose to spend.
So my answer is a little bit different. It's more broad. I feel
you can't do everything. You're not running for office.
I'm not doing everything. I'm doing anti-corruption and public integrity. So Elizabeth Warren has a bill in the Senate,
which she says would be her first.
It would be her first priority. She's one of 5 candidates actually still in the primary that have said this is going to be their first priority. And the reason is because we need to overturn Citizens United and reform our democratic processes so that they actually are democratic. Part of the problem is, I think, the David Hogg generation, I feel like they understand this. They understand that They understand that structurally the reason why these bold reforms cannot happen is because the politicians that are in Washington are bought and paid for by dark money corporate interests.
So that also connects to what Dorian was saying, and this is one of the big sort of choices, right? So even when you're talking about individual issues, there's actually, to me, like a meta choice, which is, do you do things that structurally build power, right? So structural reform about money in politics or a national voting holiday. The first bill is just
easy.
Hey, let's have election day off. We'll give you a holiday. Or labor unions. All of those are in the same category of you build power. Right. And then there's your prescription drugs are lower. And that's a tough choice because it's the immediate effect of the kitchen table issue is always there. It's always beckoning. But the long-term effects of investing in building power and capacity pay dividends.
With all due respect to my big sister, and I agree with healthcare, but
Not literally.
liberals and progressives love policy. The other side loves power.
That's true.
And I think
yes.
we have to get ourselves in the mindset of understanding the rules of the game matter just as much as the policy. We change the rules of the game and empower more people of actual people power. We can win on any policy issue we want.
So I agree with that. I did learn that when people start with all due respect, it means
my
they don't
big
have
sister.
any.
My big sister, particularly.
But putting that aside, absolutely. But I think part of the thing that's a little artificial about discussion is it really should be the levers of power at the same time that there's attention to policy, but policy that really impacts the daily lives of Americans. But I will say, because this is something that doesn't require legislation, but if Democrats take back the Senate and hold on to the House and have the White House, judges. Because if we don't deal,
and that's a great,
that's power.
Let me say, that's a great, but that's also a great example of exactly the same.
Yes.
Part of the issue, I think, is that the Republican domestic policy agenda, it's cutting taxes.
Yeah,
Like that's
what
it.
is
It's
it?
like so they tend to focus on these structural power things because there's not a lot of things they want to do other than regulatory rollbacks and cut taxes. Democrats come into office every time with they've got a bunch of policy they got to tick through, and so what you end up is that choice to go for the policy.
And the importance of the judges is because if you pass the legislation, you don't have conservative judges
They're going to strike
coming
it down.
behind us, tearing down all of our legislation.
You could already see, let's say, through some incredible active political will and activism, like there's a Democratic president who passes a Green New Deal, huge, $1 trillion of investment infrastructure, like. Is a Roberts Court going to sit there and be like, oh, cool, nice Green New Deal?
Right. So the one additional point I'll make about healthcare, just on the point about, because levers of power are critical, but one of the things that we forget is it's a Republican strategy to kill policy that will deliver to everyday people through money.
Yes.
But healthcare is sucking so much money out of the economy. It's impacting money for education. It's impacting money that might be available for housing policy. These are also major things that we need in this country.
We're up against it here, but the last thing I'll just say on this is immigration reform. From a pure coalitional politics, when you survey the coalition, you say, okay, here's our coalition. What immigrant communities and immigrant adjacent communities have been put through by this administration. A lot of that can be undone through executive action. But I've watched that fight from McCain-Kennedy back in 2005, 2006, and it never gets done, and it didn't get prioritized by Barack Obama, which is defensible, given all the things he had to do.
This time,
but to come into office and not turn around to those folks who have been with you for all of those years while you have not provided some status to those 11 or 12 million,
absolutely,
that is very, very, very tough.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank you. And so from a pure coalitional politics. So Lena Maxwell, Maya Wiley, Dorian Warren, that was excellent. Thank you so much. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.